I started doing my chores, started making my bed every day. Again, I stopped the excuses that my life is never going to be what it's going to be because I got dealt a shitty hand. I realized that I can reshuffle and I can keep dealing and keep moving forward. And eventually I'm going to get the pocket aces or whatever that might be. And I stopped making these excuses. And again, I still would have arguments with my kid's mom or my mom. But even after that, having the spirituality within me, knowing that I can have responsibility and accountability for me, I could talk and sort these things out to change. And I'm not perfect by any means. I can I cuss?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fucked up. I would fuck up all the time.
Earmuffs.
Yeah. Earmuffs, everybody. And I would fuck up all the time.
Thanks so much for listening to No Lions Here with me, Big Panda.
My fiance keeps calling me. You get a wild animal and you just call it whatever you want and it starts responding to it.
Right. If I start responding to those names, then those names are going to more likely to stick, right? Yeah. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to No Lions Here. My name is Big Panda. I'm a recovering sex addict. Before we jump into today's show, I do want to give a shout out to the sponsor for the show, Begin Again Institute. If you or someone you love is struggling with sex or porn addiction, check out their information in the description. I've talked a lot about them. They've been a really big part of my story, helped me get a running start into recovery. So definitely go check them out. On today's episode, really excited, in-studio guests. These are the way that I like to do it, man. Sitting across each other, talking recovery, talking hope, sharing experiences. So really, really blessed and grateful to have you on the show with me today, Ty. I have Ty Bechel. Ty was he's a brother in recovery. He was one of my instructors for the CPRS program that I've been telling the audience about, which I just passed that test a couple weeks ago. So Good job, Ty. Thank you, Ty, for all the expertise that you passed along to me. And so I'm really grateful to have you on the show, man, and to continue and grow this connection, man. Welcome to No Lions Here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was blessed. I was like, he does like me. He's got me on. Yeah.
Man, it's actually funny. So we actually talked, I don't know if you remember or not, but back like when I first started my recovery back in 2021, we actually had a phone call. Mm-hmm. My Rachel from Chestnut sent me your information. Because she knew that I was doing the podcast and stuff, and we talked, and then it was funny because then fast forward 3 years or whatever, 2 years, and oh hey, you're gonna take this course, and one of your instructors is Ty.
Oh really? I didn't know that. That's wild. Yeah. So did we just like talk once on the phone?
It was just a one-time talk. Like we kind of talked a little bit about podcasts. I mean, it wasn't a real long. I don't really remember the specifics of the conversation, but we did talk. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
And I remember you, but you don't remember me.
Isn't that what they say? You made it or something like that? I doubt I've actually really made it, but I apologize.
Man. Yeah.
And in the line of work that I did and starting the nonprofit and stuff, like so many phone calls, so many networking opportunities that you have to take advantage of, and you want to try to remember everybody. And it's one of the shittiest feelings to say, damn it, who are you? Or like, okay, I'm like, you're telling me, I'm like, okay, when did we meet? When did we talk? What did we talk about? I can't remember. But you are in my life today, and you are very important, so I remember you now.
Absolutely, and it's funny because like that's how things go. Like paths cross, or nothing came of that first conversation. Okay, well now look at where we are today, right? You're in studio, we're talking. We met up last week for breakfast and talked about kind of getting into some content together. Mm-hmm. So I think we're starting here, like first piece right now, and so it's like all right, we're connected now.
Heck yeah. And it's always interesting. Like as soon as you came into class and I met you, and there was something that drew me to you. And I think it was when you're like, before you even announced that you were doing the podcast stuff, because I was doing the radio show down at 107.1. And you know how it is when someone, even like in recovery, you find someone's in recovery and you're like, oh, hey, da 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 da. And then when I found out you did this stuff, like I knew there was something special about you, like this and this. And let's talk about mics. And man, I'm really a big nerd when it comes to like what kind of mics and software we're using and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And then I remember too, it was kind of cool, like in that class, like I remember going in and like being so scared to tell people I was a sex addict. Like, how are other people going to take me? Like, oh God. Because, you know, it's still very much stigmatized around sexual addiction. And I remember you and me had a conversation. You're like, man, I'm actually really glad that you're here. I think that there needs to be more awareness around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the show Shameless when there's that one person that's part of, I think one of the support groups for sex addiction, and he ends up relapsing. And that show was like even drug addiction and alcohol addiction. They did such a great job in that show to kind of highlight it and like the insanity that can ensue.
Yeah.
And then like Frank Gallagher, just whatever, that dude, I don't think was ever going to get it, but he was an interesting character. But I think it was Brian Davis.
Yeah.
I had her on the podcast Recovery Uncensored. She called, she's been in multiple movies. She's done stuff with Jake Gyllenhaal, and she's was an openly admittingly a sex and love addict is how she liked to describe it. And when I did that, I'm like, man, I need to have her on, because when I did my 12 steps and I'm like, I think I have a problem with that too. You know what I mean? And it was discovered, like for me, it was anything that made me feel better and allowed me even briefly to have this out of body experience, because I didn't really like who I was.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of people, more people than we will ever know, that qualify for that. And that's something, what I really enjoy about taking this into the treatment center is letting people know, like, hey, just be on the lookout, because we can give up drugs and alcohol, but then we can absolutely replace it with so many other things: online shopping, eating, sex. Like, just be aware that this is out there. And just know that, like, hey, there are resources and help out there if you do find yourself in a position where this is causing consequences in your life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's pretty wild too, because when you think about, a high you get from a drug, cocaine, alcohol, heroin, whatever, the high is usually, the peak of it is very short, just like an orgasm.
Yeah.
And like, you have all that build up just for maybe 30 seconds of a peak, and after, or you feel relaxed, and that's kind of part of that part of the brain allowing you to have this this comfortable feeling, because with drugs is the same thing. You get to relax, and from a guy that had a lot of pain growing up, it was, it made sense why I clung to drugs. I clung to women, because mom didn't hold me enough, or dad didn't pay enough attention. I was always searching and grabbing to feel different. So
yeah. So speaking of like your story, I mean, let's give the folks a little insight into, obviously you're in recovery, you're in long-term recovery.
Yep.
I know you do a lot for the community, but before all of that, I mean, what led you into the program, or the rooms?
Shit. I mean, again, the more you think about your life and you reflect on it and you look back at things, a lot of it was I was born in the 80s. So growing up, there was a lot of just sit in the back. You probably need to be in a car seat. We don't care. Just, we won't roll. Like drinking, leaving beers around, ashtrays, people would smoke in restaurants. So all this kind of other stuff going on that you don't necessarily see today. But as far as like smoking in restaurants and all that, it was just mom and dad were young when they had me. Dad didn't necessarily come around as much as he could have. Mom was off doing her thing. So I spent a lot of time by myself, which was cool. I'd watch cartoons, I'd read. I always liked creating in my mind, imagination, stuff like that. And it just led to just dysfunctional family, because, my mom and dad weren't together. I ended up leaving my mom to go live with my dad. And I thought that was going to help me fix and like myself. Because again, even at a young age, with like drugs, alcohol, or sex, we're always reaching out to try to make us feel something different, even if it's for a brief moment. And it probably started young for me. I can remember always wanting to be accepted, but always feeling like the outcast. even just in kindergarten, you can go back and I can remember being in the playground feeling like I didn't fit in,
Mm.
watching kids swing, be on the monkey bars or whatever. So I think for me, it's, I don't know if you can say that I was always an addict. I think every human being has addiction tendencies because it comes from the part of the brain that allows us to survive, like eating, brain reward system and all that stuff. I just, hell, man, it was young. Like I just wanted to be accepted. And fast forward, dad was in my life again. Dad was not in my life. And I ended up moving with my mom, I don't know, 15, 16, something like that. And she was off working, doing her own thing. I was working at a local pancake restaurant chain, and I hooked up with older people. I was 15. No, I was 16 when I started. Um, no, I was 15, and then I turned 16 because my birthday's in December. And dude, I went there with my uncle was working there, and it's a whole bunch of older people, and they kind of took me under their wing. And sometimes I think just to embarrass me because young kids will kind of do whatever older people will tell them
Yep.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it just led to hanging out with older people, older women hitting on me, uh, going to these parties, and um, started drinking with them. Now, the first time I actually drank, it was in seventh grade. I tried Hot Damn, and I got pretty buzzed, and I liked it then. But fast forward, I didn't touch anything else until about 16 when dad kicked me out, didn't want me there. I was living with my mom. I was making my own money. Mom was on welfare, food stamps, couldn't really support me much. So I was angry, this angry teenager with this angst and wanting to do good, loved baseball and basketball, felt like I couldn't play because I had to work and put clothes on my back because mom didn't have enough. And my dad and her were through this damn squabble of who was going to pay for what. So I'm just like, screw it. I'll just get my own job. I cleared out my grandmother had me a savings account. I cleared out my account so I can have some money, right? Clothes, work clothes. Um, just, I started hanging out with the older people, man. And one of my uncles, my other uncle, worked at a liquor establishment in Wood River. And I started becoming the life of the party. People liked me because I'd go there and I'd give the manager. I think statute of limitations has since gone by, so I would give him like I'd gather everybody's money and it like too many cases of beer, fifths of whiskey, schnapps stuff, apple pucker, all the stuff that Avalanche was big back then. And he said, get whatever you want. And he was taking it and wasn't marking it. I'd get cartons of cigarettes. So I was like the life of the party because I wanted people to like me.
Yeah.
Cartons of cigarettes, liquor, beer. And I'd come and I mean, literally I'd get $100, dude. I'd probably walk out with $500 worth of stuff.
Wow.
So, there was that and just started drinking quite a bit in high school. I abandoned sports. I was just working, hanging out with older people, just living my own life. And my mom couldn't contain me because, I mean, shoot, she was always working. So I developed this kind of hardened attitude because there was some abuse when I was younger and stuff. So I was kind of sheltered myself from adults because like a lot of them I didn't really trust. So I became a smartass and a studious smartass. Even with all this stuff's going on, I'm still reading, I'm still researching. I don't let a lot of my friends know that, but I love watching and learning and doing things. And so it's kind of like a double life. And I really wasn't a tough guy, but I tried to be. And it was just a lot of that, man. Girls, attention, um, not liking myself. And if I didn't like myself, we all know the drill. Go and drink a little bit, you'll like yourself a little bit. But then if you don't drink for the next couple of days, you feel completely, utterly depressed.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You hate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go right back at it. And then it became frequently in high school, man. My senior year, or my summer leading into my senior year, I drank every night. I was again working, hanging out with these older people. I think they liked getting young people drunk. The girls would always try to take it. The older girls would always try to take advantage of you, and so that was it. And it was kind of miserable for a while. You made the best of it, and you'd have fun, and you hit your bats and play your card games and your quarters or whatever you would be doing. But then you always wake up and there you are. You're always left with yourself. you know?
Yeah, that man, there's a couple things in there that I can really relate to. I mean, obviously, like just that feeling of not fitting in, and then like finally getting to a spot where you're like, oh man, like I'm the life of the party because I'm bringing the booze around, or hey, yeah, I know where to get. Like I always prided myself on like, oh yeah, I can get that for you.
Yep.
If I can get that for you, then I'm going to be included in what you're doing. And yeah, while you're doing it, while you're drinking, like I didn't necessarily always like drinking because I hated the hangover, but it was okay. We're having fun, or it takes me out of myself. Clearly, I mean, that's what addiction does, right? It takes us out of ourselves because I don't want to be myself. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think it's natural for a lot of teenagers, pre-adolescent, going into adolescent, teenagers to do that until you kind of find your groove in your tribe and what you like to do. But like I would look at, some of my friends that were good at sports and baseball, and I just like, God, like how do they have all this confidence? Because I was always in my head, like, I was a pretty good ball player, baseball player. Basketball is all right, but even on the ball field, I'm like, some days I was good. Some days I didn't think I was worth a shit. And when those low days came, when I didn't think I was worth a shit, I'd be in those. I could be in those funks for a while. And again, fast forwarding into the drinking and feeling life of the party, because I think we all want to matter to somebody. And
Yeah.
and I don't want to psychoanalyze myself or anybody that might relate to that, but I think a lot of it stemmed from dad saying, "Peace, I'll be around when I want to be around," and mom saying, "Hey, peace, I got to work. I'll leave you with your aunt, your uncle, or this person or that person, or just stay here by yourself for a little bit." So, because I mean, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time by myself. Again, reading. Wasn't much of a drawer, but I liked writing stories. So the creative side, and that's probably why I love to create so much, because it's a part of my past. I love writing short stories. I've done some horror stuff that's been published.
You wrote a play too, didn't you?
Yeah.
You wrote a play?
2-act play, If I Never Wake Up. We've performed it 6 times now. We've performed it up near Chicago. We've performed it in Edwardsville. We were wanting to try to do it again at the college at SIUE. And we just got to set it up with I can't remember what department, but it's a challenge to do that, because a play production is, there's like 5 main characters, 2 or 3 supporting characters. But then when you do that, you got to have stage hands, and you got to have someone running the sound and all that stuff. So it's a big ordeal, and typically you like to try to rehearse a month prior, and then you move into stage rehearsals. And again, just nobody's really getting paid, because it was, if we took it out of town, we would pay their gas and we would pay their hotel, their lodging, and all that. But it's a big ordeal, and you rely on a lot of people, and you kind of cross your fingers on the day that they're going to be there. Like nothing happens, because like I don't have anybody for backup. Don't get hurt, don't get sick. And we've always been able to do it. There was one time the guy who always played Christian wasn't going to play Christian, because him and the girl who played Aurora had a squabble. They used to date, and they were kind of mean to each other or whatever. I don't know the whole story, but he went ahead and bowed out, said she can stay in the play. The day of the play, the guy that was playing the Christian is the character. We were doing rehearsals, and the dude couldn't remember his lines. He kept freezing up. He had no emotion. He was very monotone. He's like, "Sure, you can try these drugs. Take them from me." And I'm sitting here, being the director. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So luckily, and the Jake is his name. Love him to death. He's like a little brother. He was on standby. And I told the dude, like, first I called Jake, said, "Dude, is there any way that you can be in the play? Your girl that you guys squabble with, she says she's okay. She says the guy's horrible. She can get along for this play." He said, "Yeah, dude." So I went and had the guy who plays the paramedic that does the Narcan, does the reviving, then has to announce to the family I think 2nd or 3rd time the main character Aurora dies from an overdose, that she ain't coming back. The Narcan's not working. He went and got him, jetted there, and this is the day of the play. And so I think it was like 2 or 3 hours before showtime, and they got back, and just like that, snap of the finger, Jake was in character, And that character was written, he brought it to life. Like when you do those types of things, anybody listen that's ever done acting, and like the lines just become you. It melts into you, and that character is you, and you bring it to life, and you enjoy bringing it to life. And so the play was always something that we loved to do. Like I said, we did it 5 or 6 times, gotten great reviews. Everybody, almost every time there, are crying towards the end because we have a funeral scene, we have a casket, and we have tissues that we'd always leave there, and we let people know. We warn them that this can be pretty graphic. If you feel like you need to leave, go ahead and leave. And that was always fun doing productions, just doing creative stuff I love doing.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. It's funny. My sponsor's an actor over in the city.
Okay.
And so, like, you want to talk about like getting into character, like leading up. You know how many times I've had to hear him do some kind of wild Irish British accent, like when we're just on the phone talking. Like, so shout out to Jeff.
So he does some like method acting stuff, and he stays in character.
He like we'll go out to dinner and he'll just like bust out this like British accent, and like it's kind of funny. Like it's funny, and he's like a real lively guy, like real outgoing. But talking about making that character him, like he's all about that. I've seen him act in a couple plays, and it's really cool. Going back to like, so we were talking about like at that adolescent stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like to tell people this because I've heard people just share this in meetings where they're like, "Yeah, I knew I was an addict at 8 years old," and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that because I tell people now it's like some of this stuff is like exploration. Like that's a natural part of growing up is like exploring and experimenting with different things and being like, oh, hey, I like this. I don't like this. Like, and then it really isn't until, you're later, past it into that adolescent stage where things really kind of take over and then you kind of become an addict kind of thing.
Yeah. I think a lot, I mean, I can get down with that because, when you think about addiction or dependency, that's a brain response because the body wants it because it's like, hey, I'm used to this. Where is it? To say, I mean, I could say that I like the way it made me feel, that I didn't have to feel me, and I didn't have to think about if my friend Jake liked me or this girl that I liked me, and I could just be me and just not have a care in the world. I think that was because my brain's always busy and I'm always thinking like, does this person not like me, or did I do something wrong, or why is my girlfriend mad at me again? What did I do? And sometimes I do stuff, sometimes I don't, just that whole thing that my mind is, I feel, a separate entity outside of my body. Like it has its own little world and I have to compete with it. Like, hey, can we just meet in the middle? Maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Like the brain, man. And it's funny because I mean, even to this day, I still think of like, oh God, I remember what I said. I said this to this person this day. Are they thinking about me? I wonder what they think about. Like, it's funny. I actually had a phone call last night from a good friend of mine in the program. We saw each other last week. We haven't talked in a while, and he called me and he was like, "Hey man, I just wanted to make a call and make sure that we're all right." And like, I just want to make sure that I didn't say anything to like offend you. And I made the joke about like, oh, it's all about you, huh, John? It's always all about you. And it's funny, but like, I can totally get back into that way of thinking.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, for me, I can relate to that because the exploration that I've done in my life, I just wanted to be important. I want to be important to people, because for whatever reason, I always had this idolation of heroes like John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, even Gandhi, and like the, salts of the earth and all this stuff, just like, helping humanity for whatever reason. And when I would think about humanity too long, I would go towards the darkness of it, and then like, oh man, this place sucks, and which, the whole duality of stuff, and it's really not that bad. I mean, people can make it bad, and there is a lot of selfishness, and I learned a lot of this from, doing the 12 steps in my life. And you have to come to terms that it ain't that bad, it ain't that beautiful, and it is beautiful, and it ain't that dark, right? And kind of goes for my life because I'm part of the universe. I'm part of this, whatever you want to call it, this ball floating around in space, and none of it makes sense, and that's okay. I don't need it to make sense. I'm not Albert Einstein, but I have a relationship with an entity that I feel is what we call God. Like there's something that has pulled me to that. That's what pulled me to start Amari.
Yeah.
It's what pulled me to start Amari, and it was 4 o'clock, because I was about, I don't know, maybe a year or two clean and sober, early morning, just walking. I would do these morning walks. I'd get up at 4:30 because I loved getting up early in the fall, especially to where it's cool. And I
Yeah.
loved seeing the moon. And this particular morning, the moon was just full. And I'm walking, and Breaking Benjamin was on playing, and Dear Agony came on. I just remember having this feeling, this thought that I didn't really feel that, like, because sometimes our minds can wander and we can kind of direct it where we want it to
Yep.
wander. Just out of nowhere, and people can call me crazy if they want. It was this, you need to create something for the community, kind of like the whole, like, I kind of felt kind of at first like, well, this is weird, right? And maybe it was just my subconscious talking to me. I don't know. I feel it was a transcendence of this relationship I was developing with something bigger than me. And it was like, you need to do something, with recovery. This area can use it. How do you do the outreach? How do you do community level stuff? How do you help people get here and get there? There's a lot of people that struggle. And I remember Dear Agony by Breaking Benjamin playing, and that's a pretty, like, why is this song playing and why am I thinking of this right now? Like, equating it to what I went through and how I felt alone, and which I wasn't, but kind of like that Aerosmith song. I let the right ones out and the wrong ones in, and like my lens for life was screwed up. My way of thinking was screwed up. It wasn't just the addiction. It wasn't just the needing to be a part of something. I didn't love myself, and we can psychoanalyze that all we want. But this morning walk was some spirit. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. There's a handful of moments in my life when I felt the presence of something. One of the first ones was when I was in junior high, and my grandmother moved out of the house. My dad, and he moved his girlfriend in and her kids. So I'm like already jealous because her son got a bigger room. And I'm like, I've been living in this house for a few years. Why the hell did this happen? So again, like these character defects, like, were young, like they were instilled in me young. So Dad and I wouldn't talk, and I didn't want to be a part of it. I hated feeling, but I remember this dream I had. They were in the living room. I was in the kitchen of my grandmother's house. I felt like I was there. It was happening. And I do this thing with a hand towel. I always throw it over my shoulder if I'm doing dishes, dry my hands. And I'm doing dishes in my grandmother's kitchen, and I throw it over, and there I could hear then the conviviality in the living room. And then there's a knock on the window, and we all stop. I go, what was that? So I walk in there and I look at him. My dad's sitting in the first recliner, his girlfriend's sitting in the other, and her daughter's sitting on the couch or sitting on the floor. And they're like, I don't know, go look at him. Like, why do I got to do it? They're like, just go look. And I go there, and I remember walking. It felt like it took forever because my grandmother's living room, you'd walk in it and it was straight, and then it'd do an L turn, complete 90-degree angle. And that's where she had the dining room table and stuff. And mind you, she's staying in North Carolina because she's allowing my dad to try to build this family that unfortunately didn't work out. And, looking back, I wish it could have, wish my dad happiness, because him and I are a lot alike in that aspect. But I walked to this window, and the window stood probably about, I don't know, 8 feet off the ground. So you can't necessarily just open it up, stand there, go, hey, looking like Kilroy or anything like that. Man, I still get all goosebumpy about it. So I look, and it's what I portrayed as Jesus Christ. And I remember looking, and I open up the window. I'm like, yes. He says, I need to talk to you. As soon as he said that, I immediately woke up in my bed, shirt soaked in sweat. And I remember I'm like, what was that? And again, this was in like 8th grade. Move things forward. My life becomes a wreck. Feeling even more out of place. I end up getting in trouble. I have my 2 kids. I'm not with my kid's mom because I'm out ripping and running. I'm stealing from my mom. I'm no longer studious. I'm not creating. I'm not writing. I'm just a blob that is just waiting to rot. Like you pick an apple off its source of nutrients from that tree. And I felt like I was expired. I was past my expiration date, and I did not need to be here. Suicidal, lonelier than I ever have been. And my mom didn't want me there, rightly so. I couldn't quit using heavy opiates and Xanax, and I was taking stuff from her all the time to try to support my habit. I remember just feeling how I felt that day. And I remembered, for whatever reason, that dream. I was alone in my mom's house except for Rocky, my brother's dog. I remember laying on the couch, and he comes up and he lays his head on kind of like on my lap. I'm laying on my side, so he's kind of on my, right near my, his head's on my kneecap, and he does one of those dog things.
Yeah.
And I look at him, and he looks at me. You know, when you look in a dog's eyes, you know, like you're like, man, you're kind of friendly, aren't you? I like you. And I look at him like, what? And I'm, for whatever, already kind of getting teared up. House was quiet, and you can hear the ceiling fan. You can hear the chain clinking, clink, clink, clink. And I look at him, this overwhelming feeling of just despair and anger, the anger that I felt my whole life, hating myself because I never felt good enough for anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I'm not doing drugs at this time. I think it's been a few days. I think I was in drug court at this time, but I was struggling. And I remember looking out my mom's window on the side of her house. There's an oak tree that sat there. And what you heard people do, you reach out and you're like, God, if there's any reason for me to be here, help me. Those were my words. I can't do this. If there's no reason for me to be here, let me go. Because the pain of living was becoming too much to bear. And I can only imagine like what Jesus went through. I mean, they targeted him and wanted him dead. And you know, they succeeded in that. And in that moment, and I thought about that dream that I had, and which kind of gave me insight that timelines, like, we're just here.
Mm-hmm.
Time is going to do what time does, and we never know when things are going to happen. And I remember praying, and the feeling of wanting to use left, and I ended up going, and I ended up going to treatment. I think I can't remember if I did detox and then treatment, but I went to treatment for drug court. I was in drug court at this time, and then I went to long-term recovery home, CRC, up in Irving, Illinois, and I was there. You could stay, I think, 6 months to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there, and I just dove in. I prayed every day. I prayed every morning. I helped out. You know, I kind of, I remember hearing a quote, I think it was by Martin Luther King, if you're going to do anything, do it well. So I said, you know what, I'm going to stop making excuses. I'm going to stop crying. I'm going to stop blaming my dad. I'm going to stop blaming my mom, because that could only take me so far. And I realized my lot in life doesn't have to be what my life was, that I had the power to move myself and catapult myself forward. And now that I had this spiritual entity, for whatever reason, I felt that was in my veins, in my blood, in my face smell, especially if they just cut the grass.
Oh yeah.
That you know, this was a dry night. You can taste the dirt and getting dirty, and the smell of it, and the hat being sweaty, and the sweat ring, and like all that. I loved that in baseball. And I loved my grandmother, and I loved writing, and I loved creating. And I went to this place, and every day I prayed. I got a sponsor, and I said, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to stop making these excuses. And I started taking over the house. They had like a food pantry there, so they would have a house member do it and go to Springfield to the bank, the food bank, and get the stuff. So I started doing that. I'd go up to Springfield every week, refill it. And then we had a food pantry there. People can come. So I started learning about giving back. I started doing my chores, started making my bed every day. Again, I stopped the excuses that my life is never going to be what it's going to be, because I got dealt a shitty hand. I realized that I can reshuffle, and I can keep dealing and keep moving forward. And eventually I'm going to get the pocket aces, or whatever that might be. And I stopped making these excuses. And again, I still would have arguments with my kid's mom or my mom, but even after that, having the spirituality within me, knowing that I can have responsibility and accountability for me, I could talk and sort these things out to change. And I'm not perfect by any means. I can I cuss?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fucked up. I would fuck up all the time.
Earmuffs.
Yeah, earmuffs, everybody. And I would fuck up all the time. And I think with the 12 steps, we get taught that, hey, let's look inside and let's try to correct that. We're not going to be perfect, but we strive for perfection. We strive to, and so that's what I started doing. And I did the food bank, and then I started doing the grocery shopping. I think the place housed like up to 14 people. So I would do the meal prep. I would do everything weekly from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'd do that each week. And then from that, I'd build the grocery list. And then I would go to the grocery store with one of the workers. His name was, usually it was Mike. I love him to death. He passed away, I think 2 years ago now, maybe 3, from cancer. He was kind of an asshole, but he was a cool asshole you can depend on.
Yeah.
And we would go every week to the grocery store. We'd come back with $600-$700 worth of food and have to unload it. We'd get everybody, we'd let them know, hey, come out here. That was part of the responsibility. Get them in, put the stuff in the stand-up freezers, refrigerators, and then you'd have it and you'd assign people to these meals. So you started doing that. So I started learning organization, organizing, planning, prayer. Seriously, every day I'd get up, I'd pray, I'd make my bed, and maybe once or twice, like if I had a rush to get out because we're supposed to be downstairs at a certain time, like I said, it only happened like once or twice that I didn't make the bed, and it messed me up all day. I'm like,
dude, so don't want to cut you off, but man, like this is something that I share with people in the treatment center. Hey guys, I just want to take a minute to share something deeply personal and transformative in my journey of recovery. I've been where you might be right now, struggling with the weight of addiction and feeling lost. But there's a place that offered me a new beginning, a place I truly believe in. It's called Begin Again Institute. At Begin Again, they understand the deep-rooted trauma behind addiction. Their 14-day intensive program for men tackles the neurobiological aspects of addiction head-on. It's not just about breaking a habit. It's about understanding and healing the underlying trauma that formed it in the first place. And for those who have been impacted by betrayal, Begin Again extends care to partners of addicts too. Their partner support program is offered at no additional cost to the family and runs alongside the men's intensive. This program helps participants gain an understanding of the trauma they've experienced and sets them on their own path to healing. If you or someone you love are grappling with sexual addiction, pornography addiction, or intimacy issues, Begin Again Institute can be that pivotal step towards recovery and a new lease on life. Remember, you can't go back and change the past, but it's never too late to begin again. To learn more about their life-changing program, visit beginagaininstitute.com or call 720-776-9076 to reserve your spot in the next 2-week intensive. I promise, it'll be the best call that you ever make for yourself. Stay strong, keep fighting, and keep tuning in to No Lions Here for more conversations about recovery, resilience, and hope. Like, hey, get up every morning and make your bed. Like, start your day off with making your bed. Science proves that, like, if you make your bed first thing in the morning, you feel more productive. You've already accomplished something. And at the end of the day, there's not a better feeling than opening up my bedroom door and seeing my bed made.
Yeah.
When it's a mess, I'm like, oh. So oh, dude,
yeah,
I
it's
get
wild
it. Yes,
how these these little things. And I just dove in, man, and they had flag duty there. Like I've always been, since I've loved America, I hated a lot of the pains that allowed it to become one of the greatest nations on the planet. But just the flag and like the whole history, some positive, some negative, but this whole ebb and flow and mixture of what made the USA, like the red, white, and blue. Like I honored, they had flag duty. So I would go out and put the flag up every morning. I'd take it down and I would 21 point fold it, wouldn't let it touch the ground. And I really developed this sense of community and honor for our nation. And I mean, like when we talk about today, like I don't think there's much honor anymore for the nation, like this resolve and respect that we used to once have. And I think we can get back there, but there's been a lot of pain and we have to navigate those water and that pain to be able to get back there for that appreciation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anything that's happening right now is happening by chance. I think a lot of it is already kind of laid out, and we're just going through whatever motions we have to go through. But, you do this flag honor. So I do this and I'm only there 6 months and I end up coming home and, few months, I'm like, okay, hey, well, what can I do? Like I found a place that sells flags made here in the United States called Allied Flags. I bought flags. I bought American flags. I bought Christian flags. And I said, I want to go door knocking and sell them. Well, I sold quite a few. Like I would go and I'd find people that had flags and they were all torn and tattered. And I sold some. Some people say I hate America, which was wild. It's like when you get out there and you start getting in the community, you get a really good sense of like, man, we're all kind of little bonkers out here.
Yeah.
And human. You realize that we're all human. We all have things going on. Well, I got stopped by a cop and I found out that I can't be doing door knocking without a seller's permit. And I think at the time I researched, I couldn't get a seller's permit until I got a tax ID or something. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. So I had all this overabundance of flags, and that's what led me to meeting with, his name is Pastor Mike Adams. He had a church. It was just from networking. Someone said, if you want to start this Amari thing, remember
Yeah.
going to this walk, it gave me this idea that I want to do this. Someone said you need to meet with him. So I got his number and I met him. And I remember being on the phone. I was at 398 Wilson Avenue, Wood River, talking, pacing, because when I talk on the phone, I'm a pacer. I'm a pacer anyways. I can never sit still.
Yeah, I'm surprised I've got you here like sitting still because when you were teaching class, you were just. It's funny too because you'd pull out the chair every once in a while and sit down, and that lasted like 30 seconds, and then you got back up, and then you just
everybody probably thinks I'm on meth or something.
I'm the same way though, man. Like when I'm up in front running a group or something, like I'll sit on the table for a little bit, but then I'm just pacing.
Yeah.
I'm pace all over the place. Anyway.
Yeah, and so it led me to this. I remember the conversation we had, and he was like, well, what do you want from me? And I'm like, well, nothing really, just friendship, allyship, as I try to build this, connect me with this person, that person. So we met at Mavis Coffee Shop in Alton on Milton Road. And since he was a pastor, I had some Christian flags left over, and I took one as like a peace offering, a thank you gift. And I gave it to him. We sat there and drank coffee, and me and him have been best friends since. And he's a graphic artist. He helped us do our second Amari logo at the RCO Recovery Community Organization that I founded in 2014. Like, remember, I had this idea.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? I don't know anything, but it wouldn't leave. It was like beating in my chest. Boom, 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 boom. And the thought, and it's like in sync. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll look into it. So it was him. And then I started getting out there and doing things, and I started designing the website, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was on Wix and trying to learn how to do the website and become resourceful. I started reading what it takes to incorporate in the state of Illinois as a nonprofit, looking into the 1023 and all the paperwork that you have to file for becoming a nonprofit, federally recognized to become tax exempt. So I started doing all this and researching all this, and this morning walk and dear agony and the spiritual feeling of being connected to the moon, to the earth, and to people, like going back to the JFK, the speech, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, like taking that responsibility, going to the Martin Luther King speeches, all this stuff that talks about personal responsibility to be able to give back. Stop making excuses. Stop saying your lot in life isn't this, or the government needs to pay everybody X amount of dollars. The government needs accountability, but they shouldn't be paying everybody's stuff. They just shouldn't, because I know from my experience upon millions of people, when we're given something and we don't have to necessarily achieve and work for some things, maybe give some handouts, like a hand up and not a handout. I think Obama made that popular in his second term, maybe. But in looking at that we can contribute to my home, to my kids, it's a mini community.
Yeah.
So when I look at the community abroad and my local community, how am I giving back? Am I helping volunteer? Am I helping picking up trash? Am I taking responsibility for the things that I do by driving, by stopping, by signaling, by paying my bills that some credit card bills that I did? Yes. They charge outlandish stuff, but you can't, cry out in pain when you knew and you read the paperwork, and that's dangerous. Like, financial stuff is dangerous, but we all need relief, and we find these things. And that was the idea with Amari, like, regardless, find a way to get the community to rally, to be able to look at this recovery process from a community level. That's what we did. We set out, and I had Amari, the website. I built the first board. I filled out the paperwork. I found a guy that allowed me to look at his bylaws and utilize some of that and conform it to the state of Illinois' likings, and did it all. Then I decided, like, well, if I want to do this nonprofit thing, I better go to school. And I went and got my bachelor's in communication. Then I ended up getting my master's in nonprofit management. And because I wanted to be prepared and I wanted to be ready, because the community meant that much. The American flag meant that much. I love this country. Some people say, well, you're a populist. I'm like, nah, I don't know what that really means. All I know is I love this country and this community. And even though that we don't agree on everything, I want no harm to you. And I want you and your life and your family to be successful. Right. So that's the kind of approach that I did. And dude, I feel And my resolve is strong in this, that God was with me the whole way.
Yeah.
Because I get out of CRC and I start doing this stuff, and I learned about giving back in the flag, and I come back, and there's this honor. There's like, you see the Grinch in the cartoon, and his heart gets bigger. That's how I felt. My heart got bigger for people, for the community, for love, for life, for my kids. And, you know, and of course I still made mistakes, and I got so wrapped up in that stuff. My marriage ended up dissolving, where we still, you know, we communicate and do things for our kids, but I wish no harm upon them, and I wish the best for the community. And sure, I can get mad and I can get angry. I can say things I don't mean, but thank God for the 12 steps. And thank God, especially for steps 10 through 12. It allows me to look at myself and continue looking at myself, that, okay, maybe I did fuck up. Look at my part I played in it, because that was one thing that I lacked, because a lot of it was ingrained at a young kid when my father and my mother weren't there like they should have been. I did nothing else but know how to blame. Say, you did this, it's your fault. So of course you have to get out of that mindset, and you have to find a way to do it, whether it's the 12 steps or working with some type of personal a life coach or whatever. But we have to be able to take our responsibility, and we got to get a clear picture of it. Sometimes we need someone to tell us, like, tell me some things. Well, this is what's probably fucking wrong with you. Don't take it personal, but you want to get better. You want to, because I don't want to, I hate whining, even though sometimes I do. I hate pining, even though sometimes I do. It's a mindset, and you gotta shift your way out of that, because nothing gets done when you're doing that. And then you're constantly comparing and contrasting yourself with other people. I just want to be a good father. I want to be a good friend to you. I try to do it well. But now look at everything that's going on. How can you improve, and how can you be present? Because I got my two oldest sons, 9 and 10, soon to be 10 and 11, right?
You got so many. You got so many of them. I don't know how you keep track, man.
Yeah,
I don't know how you keep track. I'm trying to remember what I had for breakfast this morning, and I can't remember.
Well, Bryce was born in 2014. Brody was born in 2015. So they're like Irish twins.
Yeah.
Like, so that was like you're pregnant again. You know. And I love them all, and you know, especially with the boys, trying to be present, because our behaviors start young.
100%. Yeah.
You know, and we get jealous young, we get envious young, we think we have to take, have. And if that's not corrected by a certain age, that can carry on.
Well, we're just trying to recreate the patterns of what we grew up in.
Yep.
That's all we'll do. If we don't get it right, if we don't start looking at our side and really breaking down and going back and looking at some of these things, that's all we're doing, is just recreating the pattern that we grew up in.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've really noticed, that I was kind of taught in treatment, was that, hey, you're doing the same things that were done to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh,
generational curses.
Oh, man.
Like
my mind, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
it is their fault. Like, it is their fault. They did this.
It was like, man, I am living a double life exactly like my dad was doing. Holy shit. And I always grew up saying, I don't want to be like him. I don't ever want to be like him.
Amen, brother. Yeah.
And then realizing I was different behaviors, but man, I was doing the exact same thing. Yeah. Exact same thing.
And I love my dad, and we talked today, and he has since made amends on a lot of his stuff. And but yeah, it was, dude, looking at my life compared to his, like, holy crap. Like, I kind of sound like him. I walk like him.
Dude, I can really relate. I am a carbon copy of my father.
Yeah.
And like my mom, it's funny because like being in recovery, like noticing that like me and my mom, I have problems with my mom. I love my mom. I love her to death. And I realized, this is probably about a year or so ago, that I realized, like, wow, like we're so different that like I don't know who you are. I can sympathize with my dad. I can empathize with my dad because I am him. I have the same issues that he has. We look alike. Like, I am my father. My mother and my dad are completely opposite people. And I really held that against my mom because I never took the time to like understand who she was.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was a big turning point for me in my recovery, was like, oh, wow, I never allowed my mom to be my mom.
It's like those eureka moments, like the light bulb.
Yes. Yes.
Like, holy crap, why have I been thinking this way this whole time?
And, it was something that she said to me. She told me that. We were sitting down, we were having a really good conversation, and she was like, Alex, one of the things she said to me was, Alex, when you guys were younger, I was just trying to survive. The marriage with my dad wasn't great. You know, there were things that he was doing, and how like that hit me. Oh, I know what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, she was like, Alex, I feel like you don't know me. I was like, and what I'm grateful for the program is that like I didn't take that as an attack.
Yeah.
Whereas normally I'd take that as an attack, but when she said that, I was hit with like,
It's like a freight train.
Holy like you are 100% right.
Yeah.
I don't know you.
Yeah. And you start thinking about like, I don't know what you like to eat. I don't know your favorite colors. Like, I don't know like your favorite movie, like what inspires you.
And that I was putting these expectations on her that she wasn't living up to because they were my expectations. Instead of me just allowing her to be her the way that she's allowed me to be me, I was putting all these expectations on her, and then she wasn't living up to them, and then I was butthurt.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa.
Expectations are a killer, man.
They really are.
Yeah. It's wild how we can do that. And, you know, even with kids, you can allow yourself to get frustrated. I think we all fall in that trap at least every once in a while because a lot of time, you know, life can get busy. And I don't think we're mindful all the time, but when we're feeling the chi and we're centered and we feel balanced, we're kind of in the moment.
Yeah.
But sometimes a little something could knock us off, say, hey, we're not as spiritual as we thought because they forgot to put fucking pickles on my McChicken, right? You know, it's like, how dare you?
Or why is this drive-through line taking so long?
Yeah.
I've been here for 3 minutes. Come on, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
And we do that. And it happens. It usually happens when we're in a hurry and we forget. And because, I mean, spirituality and being in touch with ourselves, it takes a little patience and you got to be able to breathe.
Yeah.
You got to breathe and be grounded. And where are you at? Where am I at? What am I doing? And I can attest to, you know, having a lot of kids. It's, you want to make sure that they're all happy and you realize that the happiness is this. I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to make sure that I'm here. You need to talk or anything. Let's do it. And you got to understand, you got other brothers and sisters too, that need attention. And, you got to, you know, always reminds me of Horton Hears a Who, and he's got all those kids, you know, have to find a way to connect to them and let them ask questions. And, you know, sometimes they're going to be mad at you. You got to let them be mad and figure out what you might have did. You apply, like for me, it's applying the 12 steps, you know, especially 10 and 11 and 12, you know, revisiting them and making yourself available. The same goes for just relationships, because a lot of people do put expectations on us.
Yeah.
So we have to be, I mean, you know this, and people listen, they know this. People listen, don't. I mean, we have to find a way to be comfortable with who we are,
Yep.
Be willing to make progress and admit when we are wrong. And that's all we can really ask for, because life is full of all types of stuff. And it's, I mean, I allowed myself to get too busy, and because you know, at Amari.
So what exactly, just for the listeners, you know, what was Amari? What was the purpose of Amari? What was Amari doing for the community? I know you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want you to.
Yeah, Amari became what's called a recovery community organization. So it's peer led. So at least 50% of the board of directors is people with lived experience. It could be someone like me or you, or it could be someone that had a family member. You want 50%, and then you can bring in the professionals. Like if you need someone to be the treasurer for, you know, they know accounting stuff, at least accounting speak to an accountant. Like our first treasurer was an accountant, and he helped do our books in the beginning because we weren't generating a lot of revenue. We'd have some fundraisers and stuff. So you develop that, but you would get something called ARCO membership, Association of Recovery Community Organizations. It's a national organization that has been around for quite a while. They kind of spearheaded this project. And to get ARCO membership, you have to meet these certain points in your organization, 51% lived experience, you provide recovery support services, yada, yada, yada. And we ended up getting that after we started Amari. You know, I knew that this organization was out there, so we started framing it, getting the board together. And we started off at Amari, weren't getting people into treatment right away and helping them navigate the resources and providing them recovery coaches for recovery support and stuff of that nature. But we were going to places that accept volunteers, and we were doing these group volunteer projects. We started doing street cleanups, because you can call IDOT, you know, Illinois Department of Transportation, say, hey, they'll give you vests, they'll give you bags, and you can go clean up a stretch of a highway. You can adopt it. And once you adopt it, that's supposed to be your responsibility to help keep it clean because it's about giving back to the community. So we did that. We went to a Legendary Mustang Sanctuary. I partnered with Drug Court, which I ended up going through, and I partnered with them, and we started meeting out at Legendary Mustang Sanctuary. We would help shovel manure, horse shit, and bay and taking hay, and then feeding, helping with, they had chickens and just anything they needed. We would paint fences, we mended fences, we helped them drive the stakes for a new fence, just whatever they needed. And the idea was to get out of ourselves, and
Yeah.
giving back is one of the best ways to feel better, because I'm just doing this for the sake of doing this. And we did that. We would go to food banks. Now you're starting to see, like when I was at CRC, we would go to Community Hope Center in Cottage Hills, Illinois, and we would just take a group of people. We'd sweep floors. We'd help restock canned goods and other stuff. They'd have they really needed help when the food truck came in to get it all out and pieced in the areas, because they'd have refrigerators, they'd have freezers, they'd have the dry goods and all that stuff. They'd get some day old, maybe week old, not produce, but bakery stuff. And it was still good. And they would take it to the actual food pantry that people would come to, and they could take that and have it and eat it. So take people and do that. And, they had a soup kitchen. So when we would take people, you would go and you'd sit there, and they had, I don't know, probably 8 tables, and they'd have the back part and different things on the menu: grilled cheese, soup, salad, whatever. You go up there, and we'd take the volunteers, and because I had money, I'd always give them money as a donation. They don't charge anything to eat if you didn't want it. If you didn't have money to pay, you could still eat. And, you get what you want, and they give it to you. We'd sit there and eat, and we would practice conviviality. I would typically, if they were okay with it, I would pray. I wouldn't force my beliefs. Said, this is me. You do you. But if you're okay, I'd like to pray over our food. And that's how it really started in the beginning, man. It was this long thing, and eventually the goal was to evolve into this community-based recovery community organization, which means, as we just said, lived experience. We have recovery coaches that meet with people, help do these, not necessarily intakes because it's not clinical, but you would do these screenings, figure out what they need. You'd focus on these 8 dimensions of wellness. What do they need? Where do they need to go? Things that you learned from me in class. And they would do these things, and they'd put these recovery management plans together. And that can include going to treatment, detox. Maybe they need to go to the hospital for a medical detox. What have you, whatever they need. The idea is it's person-centered. You're working with the person. Sure, we can look at them and tell them, hey, you might need this. But if they don't realize it and they don't know that they need it, they're going to be you're going to have to get some resistance. And then, of course, you learn through motivational interviewing. You roll with resistance. You ask these open-ended questions to get them to buy in. Because it really has to be that they have to feel it's got to be their idea.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like sales. Even with the salesman buying a car, that salesperson, whether it's a man or a woman, is going to make you feel like that car, you're making the decision to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel good about it. Like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And then a week later, like, shit,
Yeah.
he fooled me. Like, dang it. But as far as recovery, you start getting these blessings, and you realize you got to put in work. You got to stop making these excuses. It all comes in time. Everybody's a little bit different. Different light bulbs go off at different times. Shit, I might have a light bulb go off 10 years from now. Or maybe even on my deathbed, I'm like, oh my God, like I could have done things differently in this area of my life. And so it's, and for me, spirituality and doing all this stuff, these podcasts, radio shows, and doing the class and teaching the class. Like, I love teaching. I love coaching. I coached my 2 boys' ball team. First place every year. And it's just this little league machine pitch, but they did good. And it was always about how I talked to them, how I supported them. And they felt that they can get better, even though that they weren't the best, they can get better. And they would hit, and they would field, and they would talk to each other. I'd make them get up and say, hey, your friend is up at bat, your teammate, get up, rally them on, say, hey, come on now. What do you say now, kid? What do you say now? Get up, support, talk. We communicate. That's how our spirituality starts getting fed to each other.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say spirituality to them, but that's how we feed our support to each other.
Yeah.
Right? And, and that's what Amari really is about getting up and supporting, saying, get up, stop feeling that way. Cause I remember feeling that way where I just wanted to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And we built it. And it's spiritual, from Pastor Mike Adams to, early on, I was at this speaking gig in Edwardsville. and Tammy Iskris, who was the founder of Riverbend Family Ministries, happened to be there. And I was trying to call her because everybody said, if you really want to move things forward and you want to learn some things and network and connect, Tammy is the person to talk to. She never returned my calls. I called like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, well, shoot. Okay, well, whatever. And again, I don't care what anybody says. This is how God works. This is how the spirituality threads work. When we're tapped into it, when we decide to plug into it, we find what we need. Maybe not in the time that we want, but it's going to happen. It's going to be delivered, and you're going to feel it. I'm at this ceremony thing. She's getting an award. It's this event. I'm on a panel of 4 or 5 people. Steve Nahn, at the time, the Madison County coroner, was there. A couple others. So I'm kind of feeling out of place. Like, I'm just this guy that's in recovery that's trying to start this thing, and he doesn't know what the hell he's really doing. And she's receiving an award. I hear her call him up, and she comes up, and she stops. She turns around, looks directly at me, and I'm like, man, it feels like my grandma's looking at me when she's mad. Like, what the hell's going on? So I'm like, you kind of tighten up in your chair. And she goes, you, me? She said, yes, you. If you're serious about what you said in your voicemail, then let's talk. I'm like, okay. The rest is history, man. I went and talked to her. We hit it off right away. She gave us our first, technically our first space was in the basement of my house. And she gave us a space for free. It says build it, because that's what she wanted Riverbend Family Ministries to be, was to be this overall arching organization to help propel all these other missions, to help them do a lot of the heavy lifting, provide the space that they needed. And nobody can tell me in my life that God is not real. They cannot tell me that. They can try to argue with me. They can be an atheist, says, well, there's this and this. Like, listen, dude, God is simple. God is about connection. Call it what you want. But there's a thread when we put it and we throw it in that pond and we start feeling those ripples, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. And we start meeting people. Just like today, I don't care what anybody says. I was supposed to meet you, Alex. You were supposed to come stumbling in that class, and you started learning things that you never thought you were going to learn. And this is no way to prop me up, but Joe and I, and did you have Joe? Right?
Yeah, I had Joe.
Okay, you didn't meet the other instructor. So Joe and I were supposed to be there, both talented in the sense of we know our stuff. And Joe is he's not as talkative as I am, but he loves the industry. He loves people. And we took that and we gave it to you guys. He said, take it. Take what you can with it, because I want every single one of you in my class to be the best version of yourself. And if I can help you get there, even if it's just a small iota, then I'm going to do it. And that's why I love teaching the class. That's why I love developing the curriculum. And I just love people. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, to the Gandhi quotes and the Martin Luther King quotes and the JFK quotes, and this, which you can call it redundancy if you want, but this common theme that if we want something better in our individual life and our community, we have to find a way to stop making excuses and do it. We got to do it. Same thing with my recovery.
Yeah, man. I mean, you really just alluded to the promises there, which is the promises have been really heavy on my mind for probably the past month or so, just because I'm in a place now where in my recovery, in my life, where I'm looking back going like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I would have never thought 3.5 years ago that I would be where I'm at today, sitting here across from you, working at a treatment center, like
right.
Feeling fulfilled in my life. Right. Like, and what I love about your story, Ty, is that with all these great things that have happened, you're still recognizing that you're still a human being. You still make mistakes, and that we can always get better. But at the end of the day, I am a human being, and thank God for the 12 steps, because I can go back and look at my day. I can, hey, I wronged you. I'm sorry about that. I can do better moving forward. And so, like, the promises, man, and it's like, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, they will always materialize if we work for them. Like, I have to work.
That's one of the biggest words of that phrase.
It's that one word, if.
And that's our decision.
And that's my decision. It's my decision. What am I going to put into my recovery? And it can't be that instant gratification either, right? I'm an addict. I love instant gratification, right? And there's still some areas in my life where I can get instant gratification, right? Cutting the grass. I love cutting the grass. Instant gratification. Ooh. But a lot of times in my recovery, I have to put that instant gratification to the side and know that this is going to pay off later on down the road. Again, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It will always materialize.
Amen.
Like, and just looking at the promises and like, man, you want to talk about a big word, a word that I'm very hesitant to throw around even to this day. I promise that I will do this. For a program to come in and say, we promise you this. If you work for it, God and the program has made a promise to me. I just got fucking goosebumps because I love it. Like, holy shit. Like, and then to be able to push through, even through those dark times, because I mean, even in recovery, it's dark times.
Yeah.
Dark times. To push through, and then on the other side of it, be able to look back and go, yeah, I got problems in my life today. I absolutely do. And I get stuck in these ways of thinking. I get stuck in obsession. I get resentful. I get judgy. I get righteous. I get jealous.
Yeah.
But man, I'm okay. And like, I've got great things in my life. And whether you want to go out and start a non-for-profit or a podcast or work in a treatment center, even if you don't want to do any of those things, the promises can still come true for whatever you want in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big believer in the secret, speaking things that you want.
Manifestation.
Yes, manifestation. I believe it is, because you start to believe that you can do it, and these obstacles that get in your way. Same thing like with recovery. You have to believe that I can stay clean today, or I can stay clean and sober this hour. And you get there and you allow people to teach you how to live clean and sober. You allow people to teach you how to look at yourself and say, okay, I was manifesting that I could never do this and I could never do that. Let's do the opposite.
Yeah.
And doing the opposite has been the opposite effects of me being depressed, thinking I can't achieve anything and I'm a loser, because I'm not. Anybody listen, you're not a loser. If you think that, stop it. Start talking positively about yourself. Look in the mirror, say, I love you. Say it 10 times in a row. And say these things that you need to. Like when I first got into recovery, going to these meetings, all these cheesy one-liners and stuff.
Oh, I hated them.
And I love them now.
Yeah, right.
It's simple. Like, especially the one, keep it simple. Don't let things get so, because life is pretty simple. It's, I get up, I eat, I sleep, I do a few things, I go to bed, I do it again. And life is just about this. My life, really, even if I live to be 90 years old, 90 years is nothing compared to the length of the universe as it's been around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why am I not making the best of what I have? Why do I, and again, like you just said, we get to that point where it's, hey, oh, I hate this, or this isn't happening the way I want to. But why if there's this desire, I have to ask myself, why am I desiring this? Why do I want this? And sometimes I'm hungry, just in different ways. And I got to figure out, well, how do I want to be fed? And a lot of it is because I'm not feeding myself spiritually, and I'm not tapped in like I need to be. And, once I realign that and get back to the basics, keep it simple, and think about the 12 steps, which is just a means to get me to a power bigger than me. For me, I love a lot of Emmett Fox stuff. I read The Golden Key. If you've never read it, I need to get it to you. It's about raising your consciousness to the level, getting it up there with God, and saying, hey, all right, I'm here.
I'd love to read that.
Yeah. I think you'll like it. I've been reading Emmett Fox's, Sermon on the Mount, and he goes into about Jesus's last kind of discussions and stuff, but how it equates to what we're wanting in our lives and how we can live this spiritual life. And even though he's kind of heavy-handed on the Jesus talk, he's even heavier handed on the spiritual talk and about our consciousness. And I got lucky, and I found this lady who her mentor learned directly from Emmett Fox. Emmett Fox has been dead for a while, but his like, if you get his stuff, it lives on. And I'll send you some stuff. I'll send you a picture. I have these little cards you can get from Divorce Publishing. One is called like the presence, and it's talking about the presence of spirituality of God in our lives. There is a couple others, and again, the Golden Key. Golden Key is amazing. And Emmett Fox was, back in his day, he was kind of revolutionary in metaphysics and stuff, and God and spirituality. So it works for me, and it may not work for everybody else, but it allows me to get outside of myself and realize, hey, it goes back to, that Nako song. I think it's in Aloha Keakua, where it's, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And that like puts me in a perspective of, wow, maybe you're right, because I have energy and I got to plug into this energy. I got to sleep, and I got to make sure my energy is rationed and being used properly. And where do I want to exert it, and where do I want to make progress? I want to make progress in my life, my fiance's life, my kids' life, my communities. And if anybody can get something from me to inspire in their life and take that seed and plant it for their personalized spirituality, what that might look like, and spin off it, it's all about movement and moving us closer, I think, to this spiritual pendulum of, we have a short time. Let's make the best of it.
Yeah.
We're going to argue. There's going to be certain human things. That's okay. But we don't have to hate each other so badly. And that means, for me, I don't have to hate myself today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because it all starts with us, right?
Yep.
If I'm not in a good place spiritually, I can't be in a good place for the people around me. Let me get myself right. And now I'm like in that spot where it's like, all right, man, like I'm like finally to a spot where like I can actually like feel love for myself and be grateful for the things that I have around me, be grateful for me and who I am and the gifts that God has given me.
Yeah. And it's probably like, self-love is probably the greatest love, outside of the spirituality part of it, is some of the greatest love that we can ever experience, because we now respect ourselves. And if we can respect ourselves, we understand we can respect others,
Yeah.
instead of doing it out of fear of nobody's going to like us. We do this genuine multi-year, thousands and thousands of years of human beings of this evolution of, I'm doing it just because I want to be a good person and I want to help make this place a better place.
Yeah.
While also protecting myself and setting boundaries. And we understand that, hey, this makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Talk. Oh. It's always so good.
How long have we been going?
We're right at it. We're over an hour.
Okay.
We're over an hour at this
Sounds
point.
like we've only been talking like 10 minutes.
Right, dude. And like, it's so crazy, man, because I come in here and, I'm like, oh, we're going to get through the first 15, 20 minutes, and then we're just going to be sitting here looking at each other awkwardly. And, I don't necessarily know that I had that feeling with you coming in, because I know that you're really passionate about this stuff, man. You talk, and it's great. I love that. But yeah, man, I'm like, oh wow, we just made it an hour, and I mean, we could go on for another 2 hours with all of this stuff. But man, I think this is a probably a good spot to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But man, you'll be back. I mean, you'll be back. You're going to be around.
Hell yeah.
There's so many things. There's so many different areas that we could go with this. Like, that's what I love about recovery too, is like, I never felt good enough to be a part of real conversations. Well, what is a real conversation, right? Like, but when it comes to recovery and life and bettering yourself, man, like in this room, I feel like I am smart enough. And that's what helps me carry this into the outside world. So like, man, Ty, thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming in and sitting down and talking, and this has been a blast.
Yeah, I love you, brother. Anytime, man. I've seen you grow from coming in class, because you were nervous and you were like, is this even for me?
Yep.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know you kind of felt out of place. And I think we even had a conversation like, dude, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. You belong here.
Yeah.
And now look at you.
Look at me, man. Yeah. I appreciate it, Ty. Brother,
Yeah.
I love you, man. And, dude, thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. And as always, everybody, keep coming back. It works if you work it. You are worth it. We'll see you guys next time.
Amen. Peace.
Peace. Yeah, no sweet